Hello, my name is Myles McLeod and I am the writer of Knight Sir Louis and the Dreadful Damsel.
Knight Sir Louis is very good at staying calm when everyone else is going completely bonkers.
Knight Sir Louis is a single story, but it's told through lots of different ways of writing. So there's like a newspaper item, there's an interview, a song, there's an old-fashioned fairy tale. Occasionally there are little poems as well. This is Clunkalot. Clunkalot is Knight Sir Louis's horse, except he's not just a normal horse, he's a robot horse, and Louis can ride on top of him or inside him. But Clunky is his own personality, and he doesn't say much, he doesn't name much, but he does occasionally like to write a poem. So Clunky writes haiku, which is a particular kind of poetry, and I'm going to encourage you to try and write some in a moment too. So before we think about haiku, let's think about poetry more generally. So, like, what is it? Here are some definitions of poetry. It's intense language. It's a moment of belief. A poem is like a camera. It's a close-up or it's a panorama. A poem is a sketch in words. And a poem gives you permission to impersonate people or objects. Poetry is concentration. And I think there's something in that because I think poetry is about noticing things. The slowing down and really like noticing things and then writing about it in kind of detail about how it makes you feel or what you notice about it. And I think that's why I gave it to the character of Clunkalot, because it would be very easy for a robot horse to just be not a very interesting character in the book, not very feeling. And actually, although he doesn't say much and communicate much with the other characters, because we hear his little internal poems, we know actually he's quite a sweet character. Although he's very brave and very daring, there's also like a side to him which is very thoughtful. When I was a child, I used to read this book a lot, called Once Upon a Rhyme, 101 Poems for Young Children, edited by Sarah and Stephen Corrin. And I liked it because it had lots of different poems in it, short and long, and but a lot of them are funny, and I did like funny poems. And you might be wondering, how do I write a funny poem as opposed to a serious one? Well, the first thing you have to do is just notice when you laugh at something. If something makes you giggle or laugh, go, hang on a minute, why did I laugh at that? Is that something I could write about? And so you make a little note of it, and next time you can think about how that could be turned into a poem. I really liked a poet called Spike Milligan. I liked his short funny poems, and so after that I wrote this. A baby shark called Little Ivor saw a deep sea scuba diver. Asked, "Mum, is that a manta ray?" "No," she grinned. "That's takeaway." So let's have a think about haiku. What is a haiku? So I've got this book which tells me all about different kinds of poetic forms if I want to try one. And inside here it says that one expert on the Japanese haiku called it a poem recording the essence of a moment keenly perceived in which nature is linked to human nature. And they've even got an English translation of a Japanese haiku here by Matsuo Basho from the 17th century. Old pond, a frog leaps in, water's sound. There are lots of rules about how you make a haiku. Like they're supposed to include images of nature and things like that, but I think we can start from a more basic place where we just say we're going to have 3 lines. There's going to be 5 sounds in the first, or syllables, 7 in the second line, and 5 again in the third line. Here's one I wrote. So this one is about crossing the road. You must cross safely. The button is not yet pressed. You rush to be first. The illustrations here are by my friend Vilm Lindenblatt, because I did this little project with him a while ago. What you often find is that the first 2 lines are kind of a setup, and the last line is kind of a rounding off or a change of point of view that gives a sense of an ending to the poem. And they can be serious, they can be funny, they can be thoughtful. A while ago I wrote some haiku at Christmas and I wrote different ones every day. And most of these were silly or funny. So here's one. How tall is our room? How tall is our Christmas tree? Next year, let's measure. Or such things like, how does Santa fit? The chimney is so narrow, it must be magic. So you can tell quite a nice little story very quickly with a haiku poem. Haiku poems do not have to rhyme. You don't need to spend hours looking through a rhyming dictionary. In fact, usually haiku don't rhyme. You can still make them rhyme if you want, and I've done that before. That can be fun. Okay, so if you were going to write a poem right now, a haiku, what could it be about? And you might think, well, I haven't got any ideas. I don't know what to write about. And this is where I want you to think about poetry as concentration. I want you to think about your different senses individually, each one. I want you to, where you are right now, look around you, use your eyes. Just what can you see that's interesting, that pops out, that's like a bright colour or an interesting shape, or something you can see out the window, someone up to something, someone doing something. Think about what you can hear. You know, if it helps to close your eyes and just think about it, even if it's the silence you hear, or almost silence, what does that make you think about? How does it make you feel? Maybe you're eating something right now, or maybe you've just had something, or you're about to bite into a nice bar of chocolate. And then there's touch as well, of course. There's might be the touch of your favourite toy, it might be the touch of a tree outside, or a swing, or something else that's familiar. It can be an embrace of a person that you love. It could be the door handle on your bedroom door. Obviously there's smell too, which for some reason in my head immediately makes me think of funny things, because often we're always laughing at bad smells. So if you stop and you think about those 5 different senses, and you think about each one separately, I think you'll start having ideas. So here's a haiku I wrote about the end of the school day. Ready? The school bell rings out. Doors snap open. Stiff, squared leaves. Silence. Then a storm. So it's the end of the school day. The playground's very quiet. Then the doors suddenly snap open, and the playground is suddenly filled with children who are very excited because you're going home and the school day is finished. So if we break that down, you can see that first line, the school bell rings out. That's 5 sounds. And the next line, doors snap open, stiff squared leaves. So that's 7 sounds. Silence, then a storm. So that's another 5 sounds. The one word in there that's a little bit tricky is squared, because you could say, is that 2 sounds? Squared, squared, or just squared is 1 sound. Don't worry about that kind of thing too much. Just if it sounds good, and one line's got 6 sounds instead of 5, just enjoy writing the poem. Don't worry too much about how many sounds. The main thing is that you've written a poem that you like. So the other thing I've done in this poem is use some imagery. So that second line, doors snap open, stiff squared leaves. The stiff squared leaves is just describing the doors. And I've done that because often haiku do use the imagery of plants and nature, and I thought it was fun to use the idea of leaves as doors for that reason. And you'll notice the first 2 lines, the school bell rings out, that's setting the situation up. Doors snap open, stiff squared leaves. So then something's happened in that setup. But then the third line kind of brings the whole thing to an end and brings it to a conclusion. So we say silence, then a storm. So you kind of get the idea that there's a setup, there's a development, and then there's a conclusion, and that all happens within just 3 lines and very, very few words. I went to a workshop once by Simon Armitage, who's now the Poet Laureate, and he did a little poetry workshop with us where he just said, "What's in your pocket?" And he told us to take out what was in our pocket and then to write a poem about that. What's in your pocket right now? The thing that was in my pocket was a lens cloth, which is what I used to clean my spectacles. And actually that brought out all kinds of feelings for me, because a lot of people think about me as a person that wears spectacles and looks like that. But I don't really want to wear spectacles. I'd rather my eyes just worked without me needing spectacles. But also the lens cloth had pictures of sweeties on. It was quite a jolly lens cloth. So straight away I was able to write a poem about basically just a piece of fabric in my pocket. And realised that she had quite a lot of feelings about it. But that's what's great about poetry, because it can be about something that small and intimate. It can also be, you know, about war and things like that, you know, and there's some very famous war poets. So poetry, there's no right or wrong thing. There's no thing too big or too small for poetry. Thank you for spending some time with me. I hope you've managed to write some poems and have enjoyed it. And don't expect every poem to be good, or at least good to begin with. You know, you can work on them, you can come back to them. And if you don't like one, just think of something else and try something else. Creativity is like that. It's not always, you know, you can have a good day one day and a bad day the next day and another good day after that. That's normal. Knights of Louis and the Dreadful Damsel is out August 2020. It was originally coming out June 2020, but you know, coronavirus. When you've written your haiku, please do put it into the comments section below. I can't wait to read them, and I will come and comment on them too. So, thank you, and see you again.